One place I see so many people stumble and really kind of be unconfident and nervous about is at the end, the part where I turn to them and say, what questions do you have for me or about the organization? I'd be glad to answer them for you. And it's like, what happened? Like, these people are all of a sudden like, I don't know any questions, and they kind of like lose it, even if they've had a great interview. And think about it, what has just happened. You've gone through an interview. Maybe you had a little nervousness going in. Maybe you started great with the first three questions or first questions, and you had a great interview and answered all these questions, and you're feeling really good, and you had a great interview. And all of a sudden, just when you're on your, at a high, maybe all of a sudden the interviewer changes everything up and says, okay, what questions do you have for me? And they might do it that fast. Right after you answer your last question, I'll say, oh, what questions do you have for me? And like, oh, well, I haven't thought about that. I've been the last 45 minutes answering your questions. So the best thing to do with that and to reduce that whole, nervousness and anxiety around that is have a couple questions already ready to go before you get to the interview. You already know in your mind what you're going to ask. Because think about that. Now you don't have to guess. You don't have to think on your feet with that. And that's where really people stumble is they're like, I've been answering the questions. Now I got to think on my feet like, oh, what should I ask? You don't have to think about that. And then if you have some questions that come to mind or something that came up in the interview, that's even better. But always have a couple ready to go. So the key to this is having, I would say, like 2 ready to go. And really this one will always help you. And I always use this one is asking a question is, well, what do you feel is your own or your team's or your organization's, however you want to phrase it, what do you feel, Mr. Interviewer or Miss Interviewer, is your biggest challenge? What are your biggest challenge you're facing at this moment? And you'd phrase it in a more conversational tone like, I'm curious, what is the biggest challenge you're facing at this moment or your organization or your team is facing at this moment? And just start with that. Couple of good things. One, you got a question ready to go. It's a good question. And then they're going to give you more information, which will help you later in the interview, or it'll help you maybe in that interview. They'll say, well, the biggest challenge I'm facing right now is X. And after they answer that, you say, oh, this didn't come up in the interview today, but I want you to know I actually have a good amount of experience solving X problems. Boy, isn't that a great way? You asked a great question. You didn't come off as a doofus. I don't have a question, because you come off bad if you don't have a question. So at least have one. Have this one. And then you're able to tie it back in like, oh, did I tell you? Or maybe expand a little bit that came up in the interview. Yeah, that's really good. I can see where I could really help you with that. All right, then you can ask the second question if you want, but that's a great question to learn about the organization. Also, as you're learning about the organization in future interviews, you can then reference that question. And that's really my second second thing to have as far as 2 questions. And the second one is ask a question that's directly related to the job description or a previous interview that you've had talked about before that you have all set and ready to go. So maybe something came up in a previous interview because you asked this question, what's your biggest challenge facing in the moment? And then you could say a question along these lines for the next person like, oh, when I was interviewing with Mr. Johnson, he said that the biggest challenge for his organization, for his department was this. Is that similar for you? Or what is that what are your thoughts on that? Or something of that nature. So you could have that be a second question or another question that you can use. Or say something like, well, I noticed in the job description you needed somebody who had X skill, or you'd be able to use this type of software. How much part of the day is that used? So having a question like that where it's related to something on the job description and bring it up, preferably something that matches up with your strength. Don't bring up a weakness thing like, yes, we need somebody who knows how this software. Do you know it? Oh, no, I don't. Well, gosh, why did I bring up what a dummy, right? So bring up something that's going to relate to your strength. Remember, the idea here is to get a job offer. So you want to ask questions along those lines about things that might help you along the line through the process and learn about the organization as well at the same time. So the real takeaway on this is have a question or 2, at least one. Maybe that question is, what is your biggest challenge you're facing at this moment? And maybe other questions related to the job description or previous interviews that you can work in and ask somebody about, and then you're ready to go with a couple interview questions. Also, as you go through interviews, and the more you do, especially with a particular organization, you already might have things come to mind because you're now learning even more about the inside of the organization. So this might mitigate itself later on as you go through the process. But having 1 or 2 ready to go will eliminate all the anxiety and nervousness that could come right at the end, and you can finish strong, because usually the questions, when they ask you to ask them a question, if you're ready to go, you're going to show off and show much better by being fully prepared for that part of the interview process.